Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Friday. Friday on TLDChat means it is Video Friday. And normally, if I had my sound box, I'd hit the play button and we'd have a cool musical intro. But don't have it today because I'm coming to you live from the Iowa Schlenker Bomb Shelter. No, not really. Just my brother's basement where his kids hang out and play. So I've been able to borrow some of their props for the show today, which has been kind of fun. And for those of you that are new to the show or haven't hung out with us before to our chat, this is TLDChat. We're here every morning, 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. Eastern time, and 4 p.m. UK time. We'll probably be seeing some of our international UK folks popping in here pretty soon. TLDChat is the training, learning, and development chat. That's what we're here. That's what we do. And our purpose in life is to give everybody a chance to get together, to hang out, to network. If you are doing the work of training, learning, and development, then you belong here. And this is the place where you need to be. And I believe everybody does at least some work of training and learning and development at some point in their career. So we do not discriminate by title, not by any stretch of the imagination. We have people in here from all walks of life doing all sorts of jobs that also include the work of training, learning, and development. So you don't have to have the title. You don't even have to be working on a team that's even close to it. If you've got a product or if you've got a team or somebody that needs to learn something and you need to share information with them, you're doing training and you're helping people learn. So we can help you do that better. And that's why we're here. We're here to help everybody do the work of training, learning, and development a little bit better than they did it yesterday. And a lot of times that means just hanging out for an hour and doing a little professional development yourself on TLDChat and being a part of such a wonderful community. Everybody that's been hanging out with us for the last few months as our community grows is top notch in the industry, or people that are just starting out and really excited about learning from our collective mindset and our collective brain trust, if you will, that hangs out with us every day. It's like having your own consulting firm. Just pop in the morning and ask a few questions and get answers from some of the smartest people in the business. So that's why we're here. That's why we do this every single day. We like to add value to your life, and I hope you all are enjoying the streams that we do every morning and the guests we have. And speaking of guests, today's guest is Joey. I'm just going to call you Joey because I've been butchering last names lately, so I'm just going to let you tell us your last name. How about that?
Hi. I got the audio working. Great.
Oh, perfect. You're no echo now.
Oh, perfect. Okay, yeah. I am Joey Fameli.
Fameli, okay.
Fameli, yeah.
That's an easy one. All right.
Like spaghetti, any Italian food. Ravioli, Fameli.
Perfect. Well, and listen, I know you're a friend of Mike Sloats and Luis, but I've never met you before. So give us a little background of who you are and what you do.
Yeah, I am a Bay Area native. I live in Los Angeles County now, but I kind of bounce back and forth. I've been doing video for 13 or so years now. I started off doing a lot of freelance stuff out of college, and then did some internships through various production companies, working on like music videos, short films, and then eventually got to a full-time job with a company called Whiskey Media, doing internet video content for a movie site, a video game site, and a comic book site. And then now I work for a company called Tested.com, which is a maker culture, technology review, special effects, behind the scenes video features run by Adam Savage from the Mythbusters. So post Mythbusters, this is what he's doing now. I work with a few guys doing tons of long form video content that cover all sorts of things.
Oh, that is awesome. I had no idea. Well, I think Luis maybe might have mentioned that, but so yeah, Mythbusters we need in L&D. We absolutely need Mythbusters in L&D. I'll have to check that out. I bet I've seen it before. I'm fairly certain I've seen it before because I've always I've followed Adam Savage in his career as he's moved along. Because if you think about what they do, they're educating people by just doing trial and error, right? And just checking to see if something's real, if it doesn't work, and then everybody's learning as they go along.
Yeah, and that was the big kind of mission with us, was making sure we show the process, like the full process of these things, including all the failures, because there's a lot of that when it comes. There's a lot of problem solving and failures that result to the eventual success of something. So like we really wanted to show that entire process, and the internet having like a place to do really long form content was a good platform for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you say that, because right now in learning and development, it is so micro-learning. I hate to dive right deep into something so deep, but since you mentioned it, it just kind of stuck in my head. But micro-learning and smaller form video is actually sort of the trendy thing right now. And so we have conversations about it quite often. And so to hear you talk about long form video, in that sense, tell me a little bit more about that. What do you mean when you say long form in your particular case?
Yeah, well, I think there's a place for short form video when it comes to like just teaching someone something specific, right? Like I think kind of working on the presentation of that is very valuable. But when it comes to something as complex as like collaboration, like how do you kind of collaborate with people to come up with an idea and then turn that idea into a product, or you're making something, and that's where short form gets a little bit trickier, because you're especially when it comes to like TV, you're cutting out a lot of the mistakes and stuff, and people get the idea that all of these, like if you take Adam at the Mythbusters, like all of these things that they're doing, they can just like turn on, make this thing and have it work. But like the reality is that there's a lot more, thought process that goes into that, and kind of teaching people how to, or showing people that is not, the reality can actually like kind of inspire them to go do something themselves. Like, okay, they took a long time doing this process. They've failed a number of times. They've learned, like, I can go do that. Like that is something that I am familiar with as a person, and that kind of makes it relatable. And that's, the long form is definitely harder to get users to kind of grow an audience with like a hour long content is a little bit trickier than having short bites, bite-sized pieces of videos that they can just kind of latch onto. But I think the audience base you get from that eventually are like super hardcore and will kind of stick with you for a while.
Yeah, they'll listen to it. But I mean, I'm certain the storytelling and how you guys do it, you've pretty much mastered how to get people to stay tuned and actually go through that whole hour. It helps when you have a host that's as charismatic as he is, right? Yeah. And to have already have a fan base, right? Mm-hmm. that knows and kind of understands what's happening, and they're totally into it. But then I suppose it takes a lot of just a lot of storytelling on your part, right? When you're trying to decide how is it that you're going to edit it, how do you shoot it, what's going to make for the best story plot going along. It'll be interesting to hear about that. But before we jump in, so an hour, is that what we're talking about here? When we say long form video, we're looking at about an hour? Or since it's internet, can you guys flex it a little bit based on the story you're trying to tell?
Exactly. Yeah, we do. I mean, we do anything from like 5-minute videos. I think a majority of our videos are probably about like 10 to 15 minutes. And then we do like, if we're going to really dive into something, it could be like a half hour, but it all kind of depends on what we're doing.
Yeah.
We're not restricted by like a very specific, 22-minute mark. So we can kind of play around with the presentation of those videos, but also, like you said, like the story part of it, the narrative part of it is actually is something that we talk about quite a bit. It's not just like, here's how to do this thing. We kind of try to build in, we're very conscious of building in a story with like, why would you want to do this? Like, what are we trying to accomplish here? And then, working with all of our hosts, just have a good, conversation back and forth that moves the whole thing forward.
Yeah. So we like to geek out on Video Fridays, and I don't want to disappoint the audience from that perspective. So help me understand, though, really, before we jump into the geeky stuff. So are you do you shoot the videos, or do you just produce them and you have videographers gathering all of that, or do you edit, or is it kind of a one-man band sort of thing where you do all of it, or how does that work? What does the production look like?
So we've pretty much kept this a very similar model of what we had back at Whiskey Media, and that was using people as kind of the producer editors, I guess, like predators, to make content with like a personality or host. So if you look at our production, we're actually relatively small. So it's Norman Chan, one of the founders of the site, who was actually like founded the site before Adam got involved. So Tested existed for a couple of years before Adam and the Mythbuster guys got involved with it. So Norman, this guy Will Smith, kind of started this site, and at that time it was just them two and one video producer. And then they would, and by when I say video producer, I mean someone who would work with them to figure out the video, shoot the video, then take it back and edit it, and kind of work together to make a end product there. And we do a similar thing. We're still relatively small. We have like, I want to say like 3 or 4 full-time people, and Norman Chan's one of them. We got a guy, O'Brien, who's like kind of the production office manager, and then another video producer, and then myself. And then we work with Adam, and we work with a team of other, I guess, kind of contract guys to make videos. But essentially, like, if we do a big build, it's usually just like, it'll be just me and maybe 2 cameras, and then I take all that footage home, and then I just start editing that. And we found that works. It works well, especially what for the style that we do. Since we don't do, most of our stuff is unscripted, there tends to be a lot of footage involved, and to kind of hand that off to another editor can be tricky. Like, here's tons of footage, make something awesome out of it.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think that's the hardest part, and maybe that's the trick. So, for one reason why I wanted to get into this was I want people to understand, because I think when a lot of people see really well done, very well produced videos, whether it's on TV or on a website style, more professional, I think it's assumed that it's an army of people doing the process. There's editors, there's producers, there's all these people behind the scenes doing all this stuff. And I just want people to understand, and it's a great point, and it's nice to hear that you guys are able to produce this kind of stuff, on a low, with sort of a skeleton crew, and just kind of get it. And
yeah, it's it kind of surprises people sometimes to show up with just like one of us or 2 of us holding a couple of cameras and covering some extensive thing. But it was actually kind of interesting when we first got involved with Mythbusters. I would come and just like shadow the production sometimes just to kind of see how that worked. And even that, like, I was surprised at kind of how small that crew was and how much they got done. I mean, there was just a handful of guys who were kind of running around, blowing things up and shooting 12 cameras on, GoPros everywhere. And just seeing that production, I was like, oh yeah, like this all feels in the repertoire between the crew and like the talent. It all felt very familiar for like what we've been doing for a long time. And that was kind of refreshing. I think, the current technology of video production kind of helps with a lot with that.
Yeah, so let's be sure to satisfy everybody's desire for some quick video tips. So there's a bunch of questions popping into the Q&A that I'm going to get to, but when you mentioned all that footage, do you have a tip you could share with everybody on how it is that you deal with all of that footage? Like, when you're out shooting it, do you recognize that one particular scene is for sure going to make it and then log it somewhere? Do you log all that video first and then go through, or do you just kind of go with feel and kind of remember what shot was where?
Yeah, I mean, the benefit that we have is everything's very linear. So, I'll take some notes on the road. Like if we're doing a shoot, like we did a 6-day shoot, which is probably our biggest one over in England. And it was documenting this entire build of something. It's basically a suit of armor. And within that, there's like 6 or 7 videos, right? And like, we have to kind of talk about that beforehand and then take notes on like, okay, like we are doing this one thing now that has to do with this thing that we shot on day 1. And in that regards, yeah, I think a lot of notes and logging on set is definitely crucial. But for some of our builds, it's mostly just in post. Like, I'll just sit down for a couple hours and just bring all the footage into like Adobe Bridge and rename everything so that's linear, bring that in Premiere, and then just start like kind of binning things. I use a lot of bins when I in my sequences, which are just like folders basically, which all the clips go into. So like, you know, here is sequence 1. I think this has come with experience, but like as I've done more of these builds, I'm kind of seeing this whole thing happen and then figuring out the narrative and then bringing that back with me in post. Okay, here's where like the string of problem solving happened, and then there was this one specific moment where like a light bulb went off, or we pivot into something else. So like I'll kind of make that its own sequence and then just work on that and then move on to the next sequence. So I guess when you say like you kind of have to have a producer editor's mind when you're shooting, I think that helps deal with all this footage a lot. If I was just a camera operator and I was just out there shooting everything, I think that would be troublesome. And you have to have a producer there, kind of like you said, doing the logging. But since I'm
about it. I love the term predator. I like that. I'm gonna remember that.
Yeah, that was thrown around a lot when I first started on Craigslist. It was like 2002, 2003. I was in Los Angeles just doing tons of PA jobs and any work I can get. But like, I think around that time that became a very popular term. Just producer editor. We need a one-man band. And at that time, like digital video was like just becoming a big thing. Like Final Cut Pro was getting into tons of households. So people were becoming like Swiss Army knives, and we're looking for those.
But it's interesting. You mentioned Adobe, so let's geek out on that a little bit. I'm waiting for the chat to vote up the questions a little bit to see which one's the most popular for us to ask first. But so you're an Adobe shop. You use Premiere and Bridge and anything else in that package?
Yeah, I use pretty much everything Adobe. I started off using Avid. This was when I first started.
Oh, I remember Avid. Oh,
yeah. I mean, it was the industry standard. A lot of people, when I was going to film school, a lot of people were just using like iMovie just to put together a simple sequence or whatever. So I used iMovie a little bit, but I thought like if I was ever going to become an employed editor, I need to learn some of the more higher end packages. So I learned on Avid, which was intense. And then when Final Cut 7 came over, I jumped over to there. And then Final Cut 7 eventually became Final Cut X, which I don't know if anybody here is editors, but that was a big deal for Final Cut 7 to become Final Cut X. A lot of editors angry. And then that's when I went to Adobe and kind of got involved with Premiere, and like that entire production suite is awesome. I mean, I jumped through After Effects, Adobe Audition for audio, Premiere for editing, and then Bridge to do all of my media management, and then what else do I use? Photoshop and Lightroom. So like everything pretty much.
Yeah, the whole Adobe suite, right?
Yeah,
it's awesome.
And there's still touched. There's tons of them.
Yeah, it's cool. So all right, so here's a question. We finally got a couple of these voted up pretty high, so I'm going to go ahead and start answering this one. So from the chat, Joey, how much of a storyboard and/or script do you follow for what you're describing?
It's very rare. Like if we do for our stuff, for tested.com content, there isn't much storyboard or script as much as there's like an outline. So we'll basically just bullet points what we're trying to do in this video, and then kind of let things surprise us and change those out. We have done every now and then we'll have to do some like branded shoots, which is like we get involved with a company like Honda who wanted to sponsor X amount of videos, and in that case you have to storyboard out a little bit more just to be able to give them something, give us something, make sure we don't go off script, because there are restrictions with that kind of stuff. If anyone's done branded content knows that like there are layers of people that all have their say and restrictions with that, and to make sure that if you miss any of those, then your time in the post-production world is going to be a nightmare, because you're gonna have to kind of fix everything, which is never fun. When it comes to like narrative stuff, or like stuff we do just for fun, we my friends and I, we storyboard and script everything. Storyboards are great when you do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, do you use any particular method for storyboarding or script writing, or any tools for that, or just notepad or something? I mean, for storyboarding, it's as simple as like I have a template that's just boxes.
And
Yeah.
I used to draw quite a bit, and I do a lot of comic book art and stuff. So I'm pretty comfortable with just making sketches, and they're gonna be pretty. They're half the time it's just stick figures, kind of with arrows pointing in one direction or the other.
Yeah, this person goes here,
Yeah,
stand there.
exactly.
Okay, next.
And then for scripting, I use Final Draft. I use Fade In. That's kind of my preference. Yeah, Fade In and like Highland, if you guys are interested in script writing software.
Oh, cool. Good to know. I use, I think they have a script writing template, but I've used Scrivener for writing projects.
Yeah, I haven't used that one.
It's weird, I will say. I think a lot of book writers use it, but they do have scripting templates and elements like that. But it takes a while to get used to, I will say. But once you kind of get used to it, you kind of see the power of it and why they built it the way they did. But
there's a different format with scripts than there is with just like a novel. So like whatever you can use that just kind of eliminates the need to hit a lot of buttons to make indentations all correct is the best way. Just kind of write fast, using just
get the ideas down. The best way to go for sure. All right, let's jump into this other question that got voted up pretty high. We got, what has been your largest project, and do you charge for anticipated end video product per minute, or by how long you think the video will take to shoot on location and number of shooters?
Let me bring that up again. What was the first part of that question? It was
what was your largest project?
What was our largest project? I would have to say the biggest one that involved the most people was probably the Honda one that I mentioned, and that was, that was a month or two of talks using. I think we had like 2 producers, 4 or 5 different personalities hosts for 4 videos, and then we had like an agency, and then Honda, the company, right? And during that production, like I said, we shoot very skeleton-like. We just have a single cam op, just running video, doing playback every now and then if needed. But this was a situation where we had to have video village, which I don't know if you guys know that term. It's basically like a tent and monitors set up with a feed going to your camera, so that you would shoot a scene. Kind of everyone will be able to watch it. They all have headsets on. They can all listen to you. Everyone has walkie-talkies on, so they can communicate back and forth. So like we would shoot a whole scene, wait, get the okay from them, continue on, which kind of slowed the process down quite a bit. But that was probably our first, Tesla.com's first foray into larger branded productions like that. And it was a great learning experience, but it was much bigger than what
this video village. I guess this probably wouldn't apply to your test ed work or whatnot, but maybe just because I do know there's some folks in our chat here that are consultants, right? And they do e-learning stuff, and they do instructional authoring and things like that. But a lot of them also do video production work, because it's part of it's part of what we do, right? A lot of e-learning instruction and online learning has a video element of some sort. And I think people always struggle with how do you charge for it, right? Like, do you charge by just the end product? Do you say, okay, and then no matter how long it takes to get to that end product, you hand that out, and that's what you're going to price it as? Or do you say it's going to take this many hours for me to engage to get this done, and we charge X number of dollars per hour and stuff like that? How does that normally work on the video side?
Yeah, that's a tricky one, and that's something that I think a lot of even like people who have been doing this for 5, 10 years are still struggling with. I was just over at NAB. It's like a big broadcasting conference in Vegas, and they have
National Association of Broadcasters. Yeah,
that's a fun place if you're a gearhead. But there was like panels on just exactly this, like people who like run these production companies who just sat down with Excel sheets, like, here's how I do it. Anything that helps you from this, like, that'd be great. But I have always done. I mean, I'm salary with Tested, so I don't have to deal with this so much. But when I do freelance stuff, like, I'm all usually day rates, even for editing. I can kind of look at a project. If someone approaches me and say, I have a video and I want you to edit it, how long do you think it'll take? You kind of have to see how much footage they got, how long the video is going to be, and then like how much work it needs. And then I usually give them an estimate on how many days it would take me. And I usually work in like a half a day extra just to make sure that, any kind of mistakes that are done on set, I can clean up. But yeah, I have no real good answer for that one. It all depends on the situation, and as much communication beforehand as you can, like just figuring out the right questions to ask them so that you can understand the project.
I think the hardest thing that kind of it goes along with this that I know everybody runs into, and I'm certain you guys do too, any sort of creative production work that you're doing for someone else, there's always that element of scope creep, right? Like you thought you communicated everything up in front, and then you start getting to the point where you're giving them what they want, but then as they're starting to see your work, or if they're engaged in the process at all, sometimes they'll be like, oh, that's great, but I've got a new idea. Can you just do this? Can you just add this? And to them, it feels like, oh, it should be super easy, so it's an easy request. But for you, it could be another extra few hours.
Yeah.
And how do you deal with that?
That's
very carefully.
Yeah, that's tricky because everyone, like you'll always run into those people who think that, here's a bunch of footage, hit the edit button and bring out a video.
It just happens, right? It's just magic. We call it, in our work, we just call it sprinkling the instructional design fairy dust, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's instructional, right? Here, take this PowerPoint presentation and make it instructional. Okay, we'll just sprinkle our fairy dust on it and it'll be fine.
It'll be all done, yeah. I guess the only thing is just like know how to explain people what you're doing, and like just like I said, communication, just go back over it and okay, like we can do this, but like this requires me to either farm out these elements or me to work on this, kind of break down the production process for them so that they understand. But someone who, like you said, if someone wants to like just completely pivot and change the entire video, then you can. You just gotta, you gotta know how to explain your own work process. Like I already have this thing scored out. It's edited to the beats. Like you're now asking me to kind of remove these elements, rearrange other elements, bring these back in. Like this is going to take another couple days, and if they don't want.
That's crazy. Yeah, you can't be afraid to push back. I found, and then a lot of times they're hoping that you'll just go ahead and do it and it will be that easy. But if you come back with a logical reason why they need to pay you some more money to get that done, I think more often than not, they may grouse about it a little bit, grovel, but they'll most of the time they'll do it. It's just part of negotiating, right?
Yeah, and it's just like becoming a people person somewhat. Like I think in like the video production industry, you get a lot of just kind of surly folks who might get irritated at this demand and kind of come at the client in not the greatest way. But just learning how to both be assertive, get your points across, but also be someone that this company or this client would want to work with again, I think is really important.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. It's cool stuff. So, all right. So let's switch back to geeking out on stuff a little bit here. So we talked Adobe and your software stuff. What about your gear? What about, what do you shoot with?
Yeah. So we've moved through lots of different cameras. We've shot with Panasonics for years, like the old HVX 200s, which were the cameras that were kind of the camera of choice when I was first starting. And when everything kind of moved to 1080, we moved over to the Sony FS5, which is probably one of my favorite cameras. If FS5, FS7, they're both 1080. They can shoot 4K. They both have variable frame rates, which is something that I use a lot, which is like slow motion if you want to really slow down time. And FS5 has a great like it can go 240 frames per second, which that's plenty slow if you want to get some nice slow mo shots.
Nice slow motion stuff.
Yeah. And these all use just like, nowadays, like back in the Panasonics, we were using these proprietary solid state cards that were like $500, but now it's like SD cards for $50 that we're recording most of our footage on. So the FS5, what was that?
Let me just see if I can find one of these, find a picture to share with everybody so they know what you're talking about. So the Sony FS5?
FS5, yeah. I don't think I've done a video on it. I do videos every now and then on Tested about the gear that I use. I don't think that was one of them. I don't think I've done a video on that yet. But I use that. I've traveled with that everywhere. I brought that to Europe for a bunch of shoots out there. I brought that to the Arctic. We did like a 18-day trip to the Arctic, and that thing held up. Yeah, that camera is one of my favorites. And then I also use a GH5, which is one of the newer 4K cameras right now, which is like a pretty small, like DSLR-sized camera that has really good. There we go. Yeah, not incredibly expensive.
Have you ever had a chance to shoot with a Red?
I have not. No, I've worked with Red footage, but I haven't shot with a Red or like an Amira. I haven't used any of the big guys yet. Yeah, FS5 and FS7. FS7 is probably the biggest camera.
That's a cool looking camera.
Yeah, it's basically it's just the FS5 but bigger. So like it's a little more of a shoulder cam. It uses
got the built-in monitor on the top there.
Yeah, and we'll use some external like small HD monitors sometimes. Right now, I'm rigging out the GH5 to be like a shoulder camera. So
okay.
If you look here, like this is like a Blackmagic camera. So the camera itself, let me get this out. The camera is pretty small.
Remind us again what the Blackmagic camera is.
So the Blackmagic is a company that was making like video signal conversion boxes for a long time. They're an Australian-based company, and they started getting into making cameras. They did two things. They acquired DaVinci Resolve, which is a color grading program, which also has a free, it has a built-in editor. And this is a free program. The light version is free. So if anybody's into like dabbling into video editing for the first time and they just want to check it out and see if they like it, I highly recommend downloading that program, DaVinci Resolve, because it's a really powerful color grading program and a pretty decent editor. But anyway, so they acquired that company and then they started making these cameras. That one right there on the screen is probably like their first camera to come out, and it was at the time not a lot of people were, or not a lot of like prosumers were shooting in RAW or like in flat color profiles, and so they were kind of led this movement of shooting in something that was less corrected in camera, so that you can take it into post-production and manipulate the image in any kind of a huge number of ways. So I was really into their cameras only because it taught me color grading and color correction. So like the image that you get out of there is almost like gray, and then you add,
wow.
Yeah, so like you get this real gray kind of washed out image. But what's happening is you have it's keeping all of the black levels and the white levels kind of all crunched in and in their legal limits. So what I mean by that is like a lot of cameras, will blow out certain highlights. There's no like highlights in this area, but like my shirt here is all black. There's no detail left in here because it's clipped. What that camera will do is it'll make me more gray, and then I can bring all the detail, like the wrinkles in my shirt, back in and bring the highlights down so that you can capture more of the image, and then add color to, add a color profile, either using like a LUT, a lookup table, which is something that just, we'll just add in the color right away, or you can take each color and kind of adjust it in a certain way. So it's not for everybody. It's real intense stuff. But it was tons of fun for me to do. And, I really got in love with the Blackmagic cameras only because it was helping me understand the way a camera kind of captures an image in a whole new way.
Yeah, that sounds like, for me, I like to just kind of shoot it and get it done. And it sounds like a little bit too much work for me. I don't think I'd have the patience, but yeah. I'm not a pro either. So
there are newer cameras. The one you just had up there, the Ursa Mini Pro. I mean, all their cameras now, you actually have the ability to build in a grade. So
okay.
So I can go off and shoot color charts and like shoot some test footage, and then bring it into DaVinci Resolve, create a color profile and like a levels adjustment that I like, then export that out into a file, put that file onto the camera, and then have the camera either apply it, like bake it in, or just give me a view on the monitor of what it would look like if I applied that grade.
Ah, nice. Okay.
So there's a lot of options you can do with that, and if you're going for like a very specific look for your project, that's a good way to do it.
Yeah, well, I would think that that would be a very cool way for production companies to make sure that, like, if if you're using different crews in different locations, to guarantee that the footage looks similar when they're shooting, you could send them that profile, right? Everybody puts that in their camera, and then everybody makes sure that when they shoot, they get the look. They get a similar look.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm kind of guessing.
Yeah, like I guess lenses start to come in factor at this, but like, yeah, with this camera, I matched this guy up with the Canon C100, which is another camera we use. But I essentially have LUTs for all the different cameras we use. So if I'm using this as a B cam for the Canon C100, when I bring this into post production, I have a LUT called Blackmagic 2 Canon. And what that is just, it's a grade that I've sat there with the Blackmagic and matched up with the Canon so that I can just apply it over. And then same with the Sony. The Sony has like a different, because all these cameras have slightly different looks to them. Like,
yeah, right. Well, that's what I was always concerned about. That's what I was thinking. Cause I'm like, if you're using a bunch of different cameras on a shoot, I know that you can do color correction and stuff like that in all the different editing suites afterwards.
Yeah.
But there's in some certain instances, the look is so different that color correction really doesn't quite do it.
Yeah, and then you start getting to like secondary color corrections, which get a little crazy. But like when you're looking at two cameras and half of everything is matched, so like,
yeah,
my shirt in these two different cameras will be the same color, but like my skin tone's a little different, or my skin tones will match, but like my shirt's completely different color, and that stuff will drive you nuts. That there you have to like actually go into like targeting specific cues and then adjusting things to make sure. But yeah, so matching cameras can be a huge pain if not done right.
Yeah, I'll bet. It's just, as we've been talking here since the beginning, I'm running through my head trying to think of, okay, what have I seen on Test Ed, so I have a point of reference. And I think I pulled something out of my head that I think I saw that might have been something that you did because he mentioned that they were at NAB, and he was doing some guy had invented like an Ironman Jetpack with the mini jets on his hands.
Yeah.
And there was a little video that was done on that. Were you part of that? Were you with him there? Or?
Yeah, that was at a Comic-Con.
Oh, Comic-Con, that's what it was. Okay, I knew it was an event. I knew he was somewhere, and he tracked that guy down. Yeah.
I can't remember his name. Yeah, so it was a guy that Adam, I think, talked to at like a TED Talk or a TEDx talk or something. And he was in San Diego for Comic-Con the same time we were there, so we met up in like an alley someplace. So
yeah, that's right. Yeah, the whole shoot was just in the back behind his little industrial complex there, and that just kind of showed him, getting airborne with these jets for like a minute or two.
Yeah,
and it was pretty short, but it was very, very cool. So that was you guys. That was on Test Ed.
Yeah. We showed up. There was, I think, 3 or 4 of us. Yeah, I'm looking for it now myself. And that was like, yeah, we had that kind of plan so that he would go get dressed. Let me probably talk about that production a little bit. San Diego.
Because he made it sound, this is the funny part. I know there was more to it than this, but he made it sound like, oh yeah, we just happened to be here at Comic-Con, and I knew you were close by, so we just wanted to stop by and just check out, and see it firsthand and talk to you about it, And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, it probably wasn't that random, but
yeah, no, we definitely planned the meeting. He brought everything out, all the gear out. We had the FS5, and I had the little GH5 shooting slow-mo. So there'll be. In that video, there's a shot of him just kind of flying out of the back alley. We had 2 different camera angles on that. The FS5 shooting real time in audio, and then I was shooting like the slow motion approach with the GH5, which looks. I think the GH5 was one of the, for how much it is and what it does. I think the GH5 is one of my favorite cameras out right now. But yeah, I was able to shoot 120 frames per second continuously, which means I can just keep rolling that slow motion stuff. Whereas like the Sony FS5, you have to do like batches. So a lot of people do is like the Sony FS5 can shoot 120 frames per second for 10 seconds, and then it has to stop and buffer.
Okay.
And you can use like start triggers or end triggers. So
okay.
yeah, which is like valuable when you're like for Mythbusters, they would shoot on. Oh yeah, that's the link. Someone just posted the link.
Oh, they did. Okay, great.
Yeah.
I'll fire it up there.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chatroom. Thank you, chat folks. Appreciate that. I was in the process of trying to find it. Let me drag this down.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
To my other screen. Where am I?
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Yeah, so one of my colleague Gunther Kirsch shot this one on the FS5, and then I shot the GH5 angles, and then he cut this one together. I totally forgot about this. It was a fun shoot. Yeah, it's great meeting people like this who are making things that are just out of this world. Yeah, there it is.
There we go. All right, now we got this thing. All right, I'm sure everybody can click that link, but let's just. We're not going to be able to get audio here, folks, but and we're going to get a commercial.
Oh, sorry.
I know you guys got to make a living. It's all right. Do the pre-roll. It's good.
Yeah, so basically we just showed up and you can see some of my crew there. And for something like this, when it comes to like shooting ratios, I mean, like we're pretty lean. Like, you know, we're in a good habit of not shooting, like overshooting things like this. Like you can easily just roll way too much of this and make the edit a lot harder. But like we kind of knew, you know, what we were going to make out of this video. So this footage right here is all the GH5 shooting 120. This is FS5, and it's still a little tricky to match those two cameras. I don't think we've quite got that. Yeah.
So there's the slow-mo, right?
Yeah, that's all 120 frames. At 4K, this camera shoots 4K, but I think it was scaled down to 1080.
All right, I just got to stop here for a second. Just ask the chat room if they were able to hear you while that was going on, because the music was on my TV. It was really loud. I had a hard time hearing you, and I know you were making some good points. So I just want to make sure everybody could hear you.
Okay, they can.
Okay, good. Yeah. Yeah, on my side it was really loud, so I could hear a little bit of what you were saying, and I was like, "Oh, that's good. I want to know about that."
I don't remember what I was saying.
Well, this was the slow motion. You were just mentioning with the shots and where you guys were and who was doing that, like how you got certain angles and whatnot.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, for this, I mean, I'm basically just like that with a little camera, just rolling, and then the FS5 is more of like a shoulder cam. So we had that everything handheld. We didn't have any sticks, no lighting, no lighting modifiers or anything.
Yeah. Here what I'll do is I'll mute this and then I'll play it, and then I can hear you better. Okay. So this works. So yeah. So this is.
That's the FS5 shooting this angle. Then the GH5 was getting the approach. So we talked about that beforehand. Like, we'll get you flying through the alley on real time. Then I'll be over here as you approach Adam with the GH5, doing a slow motion shot, and then from here we'll bounce over to the interview. So we talked about that beforehand. Once he landed and they shook hands, then we reset, basically cut for a minute. So here it just looks like they just walked up and then they just started talking or whatever. He took his helmet off, but. We stopped for a minute, readjusted for lighting, and then
just did the interview. So you probably already had Adam already mic'd up.
Yeah, we have, but both of them laved. We use wireless lavs for the most part. It just makes everything easier. But
any particular brand?
Yeah, I like the Sonys. We use Sennheisers for a long time. Sennheiser wireless lavs are probably like one of the more popular ones, but we are kind of rough on them, especially when we're doing like big builds or something, like where a lot of people are moving around machinery and building things. And over time, the cables or the antenna would just start corroding or break off. Then you get these like static pops, which are just horrendous to work with in like audio editing.
I was going to say, not good when you're doing pro video.
Yeah, and the Sonys are they're much more solid packs. And these are all like $500 to $600. You can get into really high end stuff for like a couple $1,000s, but we're not in that budget. So we use these Sonys, and they every now and then we'll probably go through them once every 2 years. I think they'll eventually we'll just wear them down, or like we'll have to repair them a little bit. But the Sonys also have basically like a hot shoe on them, so that you can just plug it into the hot shoe on the Sony cameras, and then the camera will actually power the mic and feed audio to it. So there's no cables involved. You just basically just push it in, and it gets all of its power and audio transferring that way, which is great.
Yeah.
Not even cables going around.
Awesome. All right. So we talked software. We talked camera types. We've talked a little bit about the audio stuff. Let's take it totally off the rails and back to the questions. It looks like we got a boatload of questions still. But one of the questions was, it got voted down one. Well, I'll ask it anyways. Did you participate in short video festival competitions for fun?
Oh, yeah. I did. It's been a while since I've done it, but I used to do a bunch in college. Like they have like their version of the 48-hour film festivals, or like there's the campus movie fest that was big at our school. But I was going to school. I was going to college for business, for finance and economics, and the only way for me to like get involved with film stuff was basically to sign up for the school festivals and kind of pretend like I was a film student. So I would do it was a bizarre time. So I got to know that whole crew that was there, and I'm friends with one of the guys now to this day, John Finger, who I still work with on short film stuff. But we would just get all our friends together and make these basically like films within, you have like a 48-hour time limit to grab a story. They give you some gear, and then you just go shoot something. And those were fun. We made it to like the finals, like went to, they took us down to like the Paramount lot, and then we screened it on one of their theaters there with a bunch of other schools from all over the world.
It's like early form hackathon.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. Yeah. Just get a bunch of people together.
Here's a story or something, and give it to everybody. Have them go, give them 48 hours, 24 hours, whatever. Have them all go shoot it and edit it, and then have them all come back and see what you got.
And like sometimes they'd make it so that you weren't working on it beforehand by like giving you you pull a plot out of a bag or a prop and be like, work this prop into your film. And there were a lot of people who were just who used their tools available and making a little film. But at this time, like Cinema 4D and a lot of the special effects software programs were becoming much more accessible. So then, like my friend John, like he would be putting all these crazy special effects of like heads getting blown off and like explosions and cars blown up. So he would usually always win because of that. But yeah, you saw some interesting stuff come out of those. Those are great.
Yeah, it's always cool stuff. It's always nice to know that stuff even exists too, because you just kind of forget that you could get some inspiration from watching other people go through that process or engaging in it yourself. And speaking of inspiration, somebody dropped in the chat. So this will be a good quick question. So who do you take inspiration from? What inspires you in your work?
Oh man, that's a tough one for me. I mean,
deep questions from our chat room today.
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned that you draw and you do art, you did comic stuff. I would assume that you're kind of into that space, and that kind of guides you a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, like growing up, like as I was kind of getting into all this, I mean, it was a lot of like, I would, DVDs were just a thing at that point. They were just coming in, and like I would spend hours and hours and hours just in the behind the scenes, just like figuring out how people did stuff, and like just watching some of my favorite directors at the time, like Scorsese and James Cameron and Peter Jackson, like just being able to spend so much time with those people behind the scenes through a DVD, I think was kind of what moved me from doing whatever I was doing at that time to like really start pursuing this as a career.
Yeah, getting out of finance and going into movie making.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that whole journey was real strange because I moved to Los Angeles post high school to explore film schools and basically check out film schools, and I was using Craigslist to go do PA work, and I was working alongside people who just got out of film school, $100,000 in debt. And here we were in like the kind of the same spot. And I thought I could, if I want to do film, if I want to do production, I think I can pursue this on my own. And I thought maybe going to school for something else would have been, like big business would help me kind of in other ways. So like I said, I still, even though I was going to school for business, I still kept up film stuff. And, I think graduating from finance in 2007, during the recession and the housing collapse and no work, kind of then pushed me to do this even more full time.
Yeah, it's funny how circumstances can do that for you. It's like, you kind of want to do it. You kind of have this inner urge, but you're maybe afraid, or you had some other path also that you were on and trying to make that decision. Life sort of tends to make those decisions for you sometimes. Huh?
Yeah. It was interesting. Yeah, it definitely, it definitely kind of
good question. Another good question here as we approach the top of the hour. We're running out of time, and I just saw Mike Sloat jump into the chat, but we're getting so close to the end, Mike. I think I'm just going to run through these questions. He does ask, did you have any really interesting or really lame internships when you first started?
Yeah, lame ones for sure. No, Mike. When I moved back from Los Angeles after doing like production assistant work and stuff, I was, like I said, I was going to school for business, but I was trying my best to find production stuff to work on. And there was, it was basically just open up a phone book and just cold call people. And I think Mike was working his company, Roaring Mouse, with Jason Pedri and Sarah Pedri. They posted they were looking for like an intern to come help with various stuff. So I kind of jumped on that, met with him, and then kind of learned a lot of spent a good couple of years with them, just like a couple of days a week, just getting my hands on software that I didn't have otherwise, like a lot of the Final Cut stuff I didn't have. And, they had this whole production suite that I got to just kind of hang out in and, learn from there, learn like etiquette, learn set etiquette, kind of how sets work a little bit more intimately than like the PA stuff I was doing in LA was very much at that time. It was very much just like, okay, watch this grip truck for 4 hours while this big, huge shoot happens. The productions were so much bigger that it was hard to get your hands on a lot of things. So actually leaving Los Angeles, working with Mike and then at Roaring Mouse, I was able to get my hands on a lot more stuff and learn a lot more kind of how a production, like a boutique production company works. And I think that has, informed.
So I'm assuming you're a musician too then, right?
I used to be more, I was in the high school band playing bass, and I dabble in like guitar and I'm trying to learn piano now.
Well, of course, because that's how you got connected with Mike then. So that's why I just sort of put the two together, Yeah, I think
Mike directed a lot of the music videos for bands that I really, really liked at the time, like NoFX, Machine Head. So he did all these videos, and I was like, wow, you did that. And I was able to like just kind of pick his brain on how they did those productions. Like one of my favorite things I think to do is just when I meet someone who has done like a video that I like, or a movie or a short film that I like, or even just other companies who work with video production, like just sit there and like, so how do you do this thing? Like, how did you put this production together? Or how do you do this differently than I do? And just constantly kind of annoying people with that just to understand that stuff more.
Yeah, perfect. Hey, we're getting close to the top of the hour, and I always forget on Fridays these days I've got a standing meeting that hits right at 9 that I have to jump into. We've got 3 other questions here. Maybe we can just sort of do a lightning round, and if you want to just pass, you can just pass on them. But I'll just touch on them briefly. One question was, on average, how many shooters do you use for a 15-minute video product?
I tested, we use no more than 1 to 2, like 1 75% of the time, 2 25% of the time.
Perfect. What's the approximate shooting time ratio for 1 minute video, 1 minute live video with 2 actors, max 2 locations?
Wait. So what's the 1 minute
approximate shooting time ratio for a 1 minute? So how long does it take to get a final product of 1 minute? How much shooting time does it normally take?
I guess that all depends on how much B-roll and what exactly that is. But I mean, you can dedicate, if you got 2 locations, like 6 hours or so. But it all depends on the project for sure.
So, sounds about right. And here's a question that we could probably spend a whole show on, but maybe just touch on it. Lighting, how important is it, and what's your experience with it, and gear, etc.? That's a long one, but
most of the time we use natural and available lighting. So like natural lighting is like the sun, and available lighting is just like the light in the environment. We carry around sometimes these like LED lighting has come a long way. So we use like these things called I can't remember what they're called, but Photodiox makes these light panels, these LED light panels that basically reflect in and diffuse out, which are all these things are becoming more battery operated now, which is great. So we can throw that stuff around. Aperture, I got to give a shout out to that company. If you're looking for some high quality LED lights, Aperture with a U, APUTURE, they're making some really awesome LED lights for an affordable price right now.
Yeah, cool. Hey, listen, that's about all we're going to be able to do for today. Thanks for hanging out with us, man. This has been great to meet you.
Yeah, you too. It's always fun to talk gear and video. So anytime.
Yeah, talk shop. Well, especially to a crew that isn't really into all this pro stuff. For us to be able to have somebody like you that does this for a living and where they can actually go and see your work and all of that. It's really good for us, our community, to be able to have these kind of conversations with you, because we don't get it that often. We've had Mike on before, and that was fantastic too. So maybe next time we can get both of you on at the same time, and we can talk a little more shop. Yeah,
that'd be great. And I'll post some of my if anybody has more questions they want to ask me, I'm on Twitter a bunch, so I'll.
Do that. Yeah, for sure. And personal website they could go to maybe, or
you can see. So tested.com is where you can see most of our work. I've actually done any gear related videos. I've done a few on the site, and I've kind of gather all those and put them on my personal site, which is just joeyfameli.com, which is basically a portfolio site. But you can find all that stuff there, and more more gear talk, and kind of see other stuff I've done on there as well.
Yeah, awesome. Hey, listen, I'm going to go ahead and close down your video, but you're still going to be in the room, so feel free to keep posting some links.
Okay, great.
And I'm just going to have some closing remarks here, and then we'll be done for the day. But again, thank you so much for hanging out.
Thanks for having me.
Enjoyed having you.
All right, take care.
All right, man. We'll talk to you later. Hey, everybody. That's another Video Friday. I hope you enjoyed having Joey Fameli on. Fantastic. Totally going to have him back on again, and we'll get Mike on again too, since Mike dropped in. We're going to definitely, and maybe we can get them both on, and you guys can get all of your questions answered. Sorry I didn't get to all of them, and we didn't get to cover them in as much detail as I'm sure you were hoping for, but a great chance to chat with somebody who does this kind of stuff for a living. So it's great to see and to hear about how we might be able to apply some of the exact same knowledge and skills and techniques in what we do. So, we like to reach outside of our industry to gain inspiration for our own educational and learning stuff. So hope everybody enjoyed today. Hope everybody had a great day. Be sure to hit up the website, tldc.us. Sign up for the event coming up, tldc18.com. And think about becoming a member and supporting everything that we're doing here at TLDC just for you. So I hope everybody has a fantastic weekend. And hopefully Monday morning I will be back in my regular digs, and we'll be starting a fresh week. So I hope everybody has a great weekend, and we will talk to you later. Thanks for hanging out today.